Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. Younger. I teach physics and astronomy here at TCC, and this is your introduction to our syllabuses. In other words, my PHY 241, University Physics 1, and my PHY 242, University Physics 2 courses. I have basically two of those syllabuses, one for 241, one for 242. The only difference being specifically the chapters covered in 241 versus 242 and specific things like comments you need to put in your subject line of your text and stuff like that. So I'll be going over both of them, and this should cover for all of my 241 and 242 classes, not just the two that these syllabi are made up for. So let's go ahead and get started by sharing my screen. I'm specifically going to share a screen for the 241 lab, and every now and then I'll click back and forth and share the screen for the 242. I said lab, I mean 242 course as well. So let's go ahead and share the screen. This right here is my 241 syllabus, so you can see it now. Basically, you see the first day of classes was 113. The last day of classes is 5/5. That includes, of course, the final exam. As in all my classes, your job is to make sure you email me properly. If you're trying to email me, that means you should, one, only email me from your TCC account. Two, you should include your first and last name in that TCC or in that email that you send to me. And three, your subject line, if you're in Physics 241 N02B, should start with PHY, or normally it's PHY, but at least 241 space night. Other classes will have a different thing here. That's one of the things that changes from one syllabus to the next. So check your specific syllabus for what you have to put in the subject line. But in this case, this is a class that meets after 5 p.m. and therefore it's considered a night class. And it's the only one I have, so they can just write 241 space night as the beginning of their subject line. If they do that, then it's a properly executed email because it, one, came from their TCC email account. Two, it has a proper subject line starting with 241 night in this case for this specific class. And three, it includes their first and last name. Uh, this is my information regarding office hours. I have all these office hours as well. There's probably going to be a little bit more added. For instance, every Tuesday I'm doing a video to introduce that week's lab for my online lab course. And that introduction to lab normally takes anywhere from 30 to 45 or even 55 minutes. And once I'm done with that, that's basically an office hour where someone can come and ask me questions. They just need to make sure they arrive by 12:30, 5 roughly, p.m. on Tuesday to do that. There will be an invitation to that Zoom meeting on my Canvas course, so check that out. But either way, these are my office hours as they're currently stated, and you can see that I have an office hour every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday that is on the tail end of my internet classes. So in order to attend those, you should need to arrive by 6:35 p.m. And that way my class wouldn't have been over and I hadn't already let people out. But if you arrive by then you can ask me questions. Sometimes I can be available for hours after that. Sometimes it's just for, 15, 20 minutes. But the main thing is it is an office hour. So check that out. Plus you have all these other times. The syllabus does give you specific websites that the college recommends. So, for instance, the Canvas website, which they give you two of them for some reason, not really sure. The library website, of course, down here, I also give you very specific information like my cell phone number that's hidden. That's because I don't want on the internet, and of course, my other contact information like my email. I don't want that necessarily on the internet either. So anyways, that's why those boxes are there. You can go on now and see this is the table of contents, and all this stuff is going to be identical from one syllabus to the next. Where things differ is obviously a 241 course description would be different from a 242 course description, as well as the prerequisites. But this is sort of all boilerplate stuff to tell you what we'll be covering. Of course, one thing I need to remind you about, whether you're in my lab or not, is generally physics, chemistry, biology labs often have stuff that could be harmful to you, infectious, or just bad for you. So, for instance, we occasionally in the physics lab will have radioactive material. We might actually have radioactive material that's spilled. We might have something that actually has been messed up and causes it to be even more dangerous than we know. Until later we find out that the object has been damaged. So in that sense, it's really not safe to eat in a lab environment. That being said, uh, you need to make check with your instructor as well. But in general, it's just a really horrible idea to eat or drink in a lab environment. So that's why I gave these warnings. Of course, also it can be very, very problematic, difficult for your success in the class, or it can actually ruin equipment if you go into a lab setting and just start messing with equipment before you've been introduced to how it works and that sort of thing. So I also recommend in any lab you never grab equipment and start doing things until you've been completely briefed on how to use the equipment and then the instructors told you to get started. So make sure you do that in general in all labs. That's just a smart procedure. Also, it's very important that you listen closely because a lot of times we'll tell students exactly what they're supposed to do with a particular piece of equipment. They don't hear it, or they aren't paying close enough attention, and sure enough, they break the equipment. So keep that in mind. We are lucky in that this class that I'm talking about now, the 241 N02B L02B, that is a online class that's synchronous. So the lectures happen at a very specific time where students can attend and are expected to attend, even though I'm not that strict on it. But the lab is asynchronous, so it occurs at a specific time, but students are not required to attend. I'm not really required necessarily to allow people in there, but I do because I like to use it as an office hour and give students a chance to interact with me if they're, especially if they're completely online. So when you're doing the online labs we have don't really have any inherent dangers. In fact, we just basically took the labs that we use in our laboratory and have figured out ways to make it possible for you to do the work in those labs at home using, certain equipment and stuff of that sort, or in other cases, watching the lab being conducted and then you doing the analysis. This is not what I would call an ideal lab, and a lot of colleges are not accepting transfer labs for credit if the transferred lab is one that was done online. And I understand that. I do hope that ultimately we will be converting to a version of an online lab that's more robust. Specifically, I've been looking at a book written by an Italian person who uses Arduino and smartphones to create really robust internet labs, or distance labs that are not to be done in a lab, but you can do them at home, but still have rigor to them. So ultimately, hopefully, we'll go to that. But right now, that's what we're dealing with. This talks about the nature of the course, what core competencies it covers. In our case, it's quantitative and scientific literacy. Here's the required materials for the course. You'll see this is exactly the same as 241 and 242, or I should say both of them are the same in 241 and 242. We're just looking at the 241 one. So what you see is you need reliable access to a computer with internet service. That's pretty much the norm with just about any courses nowadays, because every faculty member I know at any university I know of is using some sort of online homework system, and therefore you need internet access. Luckily, if you're a student at TCC, we have computers for student success, so you can actually apply for a computer to be borrowed throughout the whole semester, and it'll be up to date and properly configured to be able to use the resources that TCC uses. So check that out there. If you don't already have a computer, they can check one out to you. I know we're doing on orders of thousands of laptops being loaned out, so check those out. You also will need a copy of the Mastering Physics with eText package. That's ideally what most people would use. But some people might not want to do that. Some people might want to buy the textbook separately. That's the textbook we're using. And then you'd have to buy access to the website as well. So you can either use both of these or that. And those are the ISBN numbers we need for that as well. No matter which one of those packages you choose, whether you choose to use the mastering package with eText, which is probably the cheapest way to go because you don't have a physical textbook. And in fact, if you were to purchase it from Pearson directly, you're probably going to save a little bit of money if, as compared to purchase it from our student store, who rightfully has a reason to make some profit on it and therefore boost the price up a little bit. But yeah, the cheapest way to go would be purchase this directly from the mastering website created by Prentice, Hall, or Pearson. So we'll check that out a little bit later. I'll explain a little bit more details on that. But again, this is the book. We're using the fifth edition of Giancolli's Physics for Scientists and Engineers. We're specifically using the version with modern physics, which is a textbook that can be used for a three-semester sequence, that which a lot of universities are offering, if not every one of them. But TCC only offers 2 semesters, so we sort of mix it up a little bit by doing a little bit of special relativity and possibly particle physics in the 241 course. And then in the 242 course, we also do a little bit of quantum mechanics and maybe even nuclear physics or touching on cosmology in the 242 course. So that's how we at least expose our students to some of the aspects of modern physics, and that's why we choose the text with modern physics. We don't always have time to do it though, and I highly recommend obviously taking the 3 semester sequence as opposed to the two, even though the two is a really good start for the semester sequence. For instance, if you go to another school and you already have these 2 parts, you'll already have a little bit of understanding of the third semester, even though you're going to have to take it anew. So it actually makes the third semester a little easier too if we are able to cover this material. Again, depend with no respect to which package you use, it doesn't matter. You also need other stuff, and this one in particular, this syllabus is for an online lab, so some of the stuff is less optional for the online lab. For instance, I do require you to have graph paper in the online lab, whereas I recommend that it would be nice to have it for all my other classes. So that would be a difference from this class versus another 241 or another 242 class. You do need a scientific calculator. It's not an app that you can use. I mean, you can do that for your homework all day long, but when we take face-to-face tests and proctored tests and stuff of that sort, you're not going to be allowed to use anything that can access the internet. So you really need a standalone scientific calculator. If your major is not physics, chemistry, astronomy, cosmology, or engineering, then really it's not necessary to buy the most awesome scientific calculator you can find. In fact, you can get away with just buying the cheapest one you can find. And if you want to make sure it's a scientific calculator, look for the button that says SIN or COS on it, or EXP on it, or EE on it, something like that. And just buy the cheapest one you can find. That will be just fine. Okay. We will be needing some packages regarding like statistics, and not all scientific calculators have that. But the good news is, if you have a scientific calculator that doesn't have that, that's okay. As a student at TCC, you get full access to the full Microsoft Office suite. So, by being a full-time student, or it might even be part-time, I'm not sure, but being a full-time student at TCC, you're allowed access to Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, all those different things. So, make sure you take advantage of that, because if you have a lesser version of Microsoft Excel, you won't have some of the packages we need. Similarly, a lesser version of Microsoft Word, you might not have access to the equation editor, stuff of that sort. If you need help with that, you can contact TCC Help, which is the number. Actually, you can find the number on your own. I probably shouldn't post that over here and get a lot of harassment of our help session. But anyways, you can also email TCC Help, and they'll explain how you can get access to the Microsoft Office suite. So. I also detail here how you can go on the cheap. Specifically, I already hinted to it that buying this package right here at the Pearson site. I looked it up yesterday, and it looks like this package is selling for around 190 bucks. Uh, Whereas on that's at our student store, whereas at the actual Pearson site, it's selling for about 150, so you can save about 40 bucks if you did that. A lot of students do not like reading ebooks, though, and I understand that. I don't necessarily enjoy it. There are some aspects that I like about it, like the ability to search out a single word and that kind of stuff. That's really nice. So if you have such problems, you don't really like working with e-text, then by all means get you a hard copy or even a soft paperback copy. Either one's fine. But what I would tell you, since you have to have the mastering physics with e-text pack, or since you have to have the mastering physics package, it, as I am led to believe, based on Pearson's telling me this, the Pearson package that you buy automatically comes with the e-text. They don't separate them. You get mastering with the e-text, period. They switched that to some time ago, and that's when I was told that. So if that's still the case, then you should, with that, automatically get your fifth edition of the e-text. So you don't need a physical fifth edition. You can have a physical fifth edition, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. What I'm arguing is that you could use the fourth edition, and you can probably find that online very cheap in the fourth edition, or even go back to the third edition. I've found versions of the third and second edition, for instance, for on the order of a couple bucks. So if you wrote a physical text that you can read, then just get you a fourth edition or a third edition, maybe even a second edition, because the examples might have changed over those editions, but the basic text and the teaching that goes into, or the writing that goes into teaching you to do the physics are just as good from the second version to the third version to the fourth version. So that's probably your cheapest bet. Uh, if you're on a purely online class, all of your what I call F2F or face-to-face tests have to be proctored. That means you have to get a proctoring service. If you're a TCC student, then TCC testing centers at each campus can do this, and they'll do it for free. All you have to do is find out what their rules are, what their hours are, and make sure you comply with them, make reservations as necessary, that kind of thing. If you wish to do it without the TCC testing centers, then the method you're planning on using has to be approved by me, and you need it to let me know all that stuff at least 1 week in advance. Before the test, or before every test in that sense. So please read over this stuff so you can make sense of it. But basically, there's services where you can pay a third party, and you'll have a webcam, and they'll watch you during your testing procedure, and you have very strict rules about what you can and can't do. And then they certify to me that they're willing to say that you did not cheat, at least in the ways that they are prepared for. And that can be used. But there's also other services, like there are other facilities you can pay where they'll let you come in and take a test on a computer at their location. And that's the more normal one, but it seems like a lot of people are starting to find services that'll just watch you over your webcam. So all of those are possible, but I have to approve them. Here's the learning outcomes. Again, the learning outcomes are different for Physics 241 than they are for Physics 242, but every 241 should be basically the same, and every 242 should be basically the same. So when I show you a 242, you'll get a better sense of this. Descriptions of the assignments. This is where I tell you exactly what the assignments that you'll have throughout the semester are. So I'm going to read off this mainly just to keep from, mixing my words up and making careless mistakes. So description of assessments and assignments. Each week there will be 2 or more online homework assignments posted by Monday and to be completed by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. By the way, some classes meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those Tuesday and Thursday meeting classes, I usually allow them to turn their work in at 11:59 p.m. on Monday as opposed to Sunday. So that could change from one version of the syllabus for 241 to another section of 241. So make sure you check your syllabus on that. But what I'm saying is you will have a homework set that's for problem solving, and it'll have a name like Chapter 1 HW, and then another set that's concept questions, and that'd be like Chapter 1 Conceptual. That those are literally the names of the assignments, and of course it obviously changed from one chapter to the next. But that's the bare minimum of homework according to the online site that we're using, which is Pearson, sort of what's used to be MyLab and Mastering. Now they're just calling it Mastering. So you do have to do those assignments, and occasionally they have more than two assignments for a given chapter. So be prepared. Sometimes you'll have two assignments that are homework type and one that's conceptual. So be prepared for that. There will be online tests during which students are allowed to use any book, their notes, and Google if they, one, do not look at any documents or pages created after the online test became available, and two, they do not exceed the time allowed. Exceeding the time by 1 second to 60 seconds will result in a 10-point deduction. If you turn it in 61 seconds to 120 seconds late, then that'll be a 20-point deduction, and so on and so forth. So you really want to be able to do these online tests, which allow you to use a lot of resources, but you want to do them in a rather rapid way, an efficient way. If you're having problems that make it too long because you have to look up more of them, that's a good indicator that you're not really learning the material sufficiently enough before you go into taking the test. So that's another reason that we have the online tests, because if you see that you have to look up very many, in other words, what I would say a good order or a good estimate of whether you're doing well or not would be to look at how you do on the practice test, which we'll talk about in a second. And if you have to look up more than, let's say, two problems out of three online tests, then that's an indicator that you're not quite ready. I wouldn't want you to even have to look up two out of three attempts. Okay, one in one attempt is even quite a bit worse. So we really want you to reach a higher standard, which is that you don't miss or don't have to look up more than two out of four, say. Okay. So two questions looked up out of four tests is probably acceptable, but two out of three is not acceptable. Okay, two questions out of three is not acceptable. Uh, all tests will be comprehensive, and there will be at least three face-to-face tests that count as 30% of the course. I do try to fit in more if I can, but I've got three slated and specific dates on which they'll be occurring for all of my 241 and 242 classes. The face-to-face test count as 30% of the course grade, and the final exam, which is also to be proctored or face-to-face, that counts as 25% of the course grade. So those are really, the crux of the matter. That's the stuff that you're supposed to be able to excel on. If you don't excel on those, then you're likely not going to get an A for the course. Assuming the student has Mr. Younger for lab, each week by Tuesday, there will be an introduction video posted on the instructor's YouTube channel, see below, and a lab write-up will be distributed in Word format in the corresponding week module with Canvas. That lab must be completed by each student and turned in by noon on the following Tuesday. Again, this specific stuff, this Tuesday stuff and following Tuesday stuff, that is specifically for this 241 section that this syllabus was made for. You will have different rules for your lab. For instance, I had a lab yesterday for my 241 class that meets on Mondays and Wednesdays, and their lab is due by 9 a.m. the following Monday. So just check your syllabus for the details on that. And also, there wouldn't be an introduction video for them, though they could use the introduction video that I've made for the 241 online class. The problem is the video for the 241 online class appears on Tuesday, and that 241 class does their lab on Monday, so it'd be a little bit late. The other parts about that is a lab write-up will be distributed in Word format in the corresponding week module with Canvas. That lab must be completed by each student and turned in, as I said. Generally, each error in completing the lab will result in 5-point grade decrease, and each particularly impressive lab work will result in a 5-point grade increase. What I'm saying there is I take off points in increments of 5. I rarely do anything less than 5. Sometimes I do 10, sometimes I do 15, sometimes I do 20, and that's not only the case with bad mistakes, but it's also the case with extremely good work. I do sometimes give you plus 10 or plus 15, stuff like that. So again, keep that in mind. Again, assuming the student has Mr. Younger for lab, the lab write-up is to be filled in with a font of a different color than black, and a color that is easy to read and is easily discernible from black. The instructor recommends a medium blue or a medium green. The Word document should also have all sample calculations, data tables, graphs, and answers to questions inserted into the document exactly where the sample calculation, data tables, dot 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 have been requested or instructed by the lab write up. The inserted stuff can be entered via computer text or inserted as photos, but all such photos should be large enough to be easily read in the final document. Note, every type of calculation performed in a lab should have one shown sample calculation in the lab. You might have seen me hem and haw in that, trying to parse my words in the lab video I just posted for today's lab. But the main thing is, yes, every type of calculation needs exactly one sample calculation. So if you're calculating a mean three different ways in a particular lab, I still only need one sample calculation of a mean, even though you did entirely different calculations of means. The mean is a type of calculation, therefore you only need one version of it. Okay. Just trying to catch back where I was. Whether the lab write-up requests it or not. So what it's saying is I need a sample calculation for every type of calculation you need, and the lab manual write-up that I give you doesn't necessarily tell you to show a sample calculation for each. What I'm saying is you have to do it independent of the lab. Okay. So if the lab write-up doesn't say it, that doesn't mean you don't have to do it. You still have to do it. Okay. The inserted stuff can be entered via computer text or inserted as photos. I mentioned that already. Sample calculations are not explicitly requested to be shown should be inserted in a reasonable location within the final document. Once all data and insertions have been made in the Word document, the student should save the Word file with their name in the file name. So, for instance, I'm Billy Younger. I go by Billy, so I would make the title of my, or excuse me, the name of my Word file would be B Younger Intro to Lab. That's for the first lab, or B Younger Motion Sensor. That's for the second lab, that sort of thing. That's the way I'd name the actual file that has the lab in it. So as it says, trying to get back where I was now, once all the data and instructions have been made in the Word document, the student should save the Word file with their name in the file name. The student should save the document as a single PDF document, and that PDF should be turned in. Only PDF files can be turned in, and the PDF should be one file, not multiple files. So that's the rule that I have for all of my labs, whether online or not. So make sure you follow that. I didn't explicitly say it here, but I am letting you know. Again, you do have to have everything shown in it, and the sample calculations of one of each type has to be in there, and you have to put it in a reasonable location, that sort of thing. Uh, I'm trying to see, there was something I thought of when I was reading this. It says, once all data and insertions have been made in the Word document, the student should save the Word file with their name. Oh, I didn't mention explicitly in this sentence that the file name should not only include your first initial and your last name, but it should also include something that represents the title of the lab that you're doing. So, like I said, intro to lab, or you could just say intro number two LAB. That would be a short enough version to make the title not so long. So do keep that in mind, even though I didn't write it here. Yeah, you need the lab listed in the name of the file as well. Now that we've finished talking about the labs, for those of you who have me for lab, occasionally, but maybe frequently, extra credit assignments will be offered. When an extra credit assignment is offered, the number of drop chapter homework assignments, not the conceptual assignments, will be increased by one, and a 0 or 100 if completed satisfactory, which means they must have a score of 70 or better, will be given for that work. So basically, if I give you an extra credit, what it does is allows you to get closer and closer to 100 or slightly larger than 100, because sometimes you can get extra credit on the individual assignments as well. So it's not unreasonable to have 103 homework average, and that does help you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Those extra credits will be there. And These assignments should be turned in an assignment link in the Canvas weekly module for the week it was assigned. If you cannot find such an assignment link in that week module, uh, check the week before and after because sometimes you might have misunderstood what week it was assigned. Also, sometimes Mr. Younger just put it in the wrong place because he won't paying attention. But the main thing is I want you to check both of those and even if you do find it, but you find it in the wrong week, I still would like you to text me and let me know that it's not appropriate. So the actual assignment link for turning in a extra credit assignment should be the appropriate week and should be there. So I'm asking that everybody send me a text if you find it's not. There will be an online practice test posted 3 to 7 days prior to each actual test. This practice test is optional and will change each time it's taken. So they're usually like, 5, 6 questions, supposed to be fairly quick. I try to keep them around 15, 20 minutes at most for the practice test. Once we get to the practice final, that can take quite a bit more. But the main thing is it's an optional practice test and it's made with the question banks that I use to make the actual test. And in fact, there's some rules that I have regarding that that'll make it more reasonable for you to see that you should be taking these practice tests. So the practice test is optional and will change each time it's taken. Because it changes each time it's taken, it's like you're doing a lot of homework. So that's why I really like using this method because I can compel students to do a lot of homework assignments without assigning a lot of homework assignments. However, one, the practice tests are made from the same question banks used to make the actual test. Two, the instructor guarantees that no more than 20% of a test's points will come from sources other than the banks used in making the practice test. And three, at the end of the semester, the highest grade made on each practice test will be averaged. That average will be divided by 20, and that quotient will be added to the final course grade. For example, if a student did all of the practice tests and scored 100 at least once on each one, then they would have 5 points added to their final course grade. That is huge. That is a monumentally large amount of extra credit. Okay, so don't. I would advise you not missing that. I would advise you to try to get that. This is a hard course. In my estimation, it's probably the hardest course we offer at TCC. So, anyways, what you want to do is try to do those practice tests, and the more you do them, the better. So, keep that in mind. Even though they are optional, it'd be crazy to not do them. The course schedule. This is where they really change based on whether the section meets on Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday or it's online. And of course, obviously the schedule changes from 241 to 242, but this is the schedule that's essentially the same for all of my 241 sections, to be honest with you. It's almost identical. The difference is this particular class, for instance, is a online class, so I don't really have like a classroom where I could administer tests. So I have to put it over here in this third column or fourth column, depending on which ones you're counting. And that you see the first online test is due 2/2. Tells you about my last data withdrawal with a tuition refund. It tells you when labs are due, so on and so forth. Online tests, face-to-face tests, that sort of stuff. It also tells you what chapters we're covering. In all of my classes, I try, well, at least my 241 and 242 classes, I try to cover one chapter per week. So the 241 means you're going to chapter 1 in the first week, chapter 2 in the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th. So I do the first 11 chapters in a row in 241, and then I jump to chapters 14 and 15. But each of those get two class meetings if you're literally meeting in a face-to-face class that meets twice a week, or if you're in a class that meets 3 times a week, then you get 3 class meetings, and then we go on to the next chapter. So keep an eye on what we're covering, and basically you're responsible for all the material in the examples in the given chapter. So unless there's a section that I explicitly tell you or a subsection that I explicitly tell you that we're not going to cover, then all the examples in the other sections are required for you to know. So I'm talking you should be able to learn those examples so well that you can copy the actual statement of the question that's in the example and then solve it with your book closed. If you can't do that with every example, you are definitely not ready to even start your homework, much less start your tests. If you go on, of course, you'll see that there's the following, the rest of the semester. Again, you can see it's got, this is face-to-face test one. That's supposed to be face-to-face test two or three. That's supposed to be two there. So I found another error already. I'll correct that, but I think it's obvious what it was. This is supposed to be face-to-face test one. This is supposed to be face-to-face test two, and this is supposed to be face-to-face test three. And then a comprehensive final exam is required in all of my classes. In my lab classes, I may or may not be offering a comprehensive lab final, and it is a Widowmaker. It's a really, really tough test, but I use that as a deterrent for my students not contributing to the lab. We don't want wallflowers in our lab. We want every student to be an active participant and each student to be making measurements and recording numbers every lab. If I see in my lab that that's not happening, either by watching it in the face-to-face labs or by seeing the lab reports coming up shoddy for certain students, then I'll warn students that, hey, you guys are at risk of having to take a lab final because people are not contributing properly to it. If that advice goes unheeded, then later on, by a specific date, I think I said April 4th, you'll see it in the syllabus. By a specific date, I'll send out an email and tell everybody, okay, now you have to have an online or excuse me, a face-to-face proctored lab final that you're going to have to take, and it is really hard, and then the whole grading of the lab changes, as you'll see later. So keep that in mind. Probably now might be a good time to show you the difference between it and 242 just so we can see the schedule. So I'm going to stop share for a split second and then start sharing another page. So if you want to hold on for a second, there's my stop sharing. Now I'm going to share the other page. So this is a 242 syllabus. You can see it started off just like the other one. Notice this part's changed, but everything else sort of looks the same. Okay. You can see we went through the same stuff. Obviously, the course descriptions and prerequisites are different. The same safety message, quantitative and scientific literacy. Again, there, same stuff. So all of this looks really the same. Of course, once you get over here to the topics covered, they're obviously different for 242 than they are 241. Notice this is talking about Maxwell's equations and optics and stuff like that. Here's the descriptions of the assignments. Again, you can see that these descriptions are very much the same as I did in the 241. You can see all that there, but here's the course schedule for 242, and this is the main reason I went ahead and switched to 242. So you can go ahead and see this. Let's see if I actually made the same mistakes on these. Now, this is a face-to-face class, so notice the face-to-face tests are appearing in the actual Wednesday column instead of this third column. The online tests, which are done per week, okay, they're still over here on the side, and I put them on the side because you really have a whole week to do them. Normally, they open up on a Monday, and you have until Sunday at 11:59 p.m., or if you're a Tuesday, Thursday class, I usually allow you to 11:59 p.m. on Monday. Okay. You scroll down, you can see yes, and actually I took the time to correctly call it test two and test three and so on and so forth. But again, you see that the chapters are really rendered in such a way that you have two class meetings or a whole week of lecture on chapter 17. So here's chapter 17, here's chapter 17, but right here we don't have any class at all, so I can't put chapter 17 there, or I can't say chapter 17 is being covered there, but chapter 18 starts on the third day of classes. Notice that's the fourth day of what would be classes, but since there's no class on 120, Martin Luther King Day, there won't be, that doesn't count as a class day. So again, we're going at a rate of one chapter per week. You can see chapter 19, and we are going in order. Notice we start with 17, and we go 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Usually I definitely do 31 no matter what, even if it's just a quick cursory recovery of it, because that's where you learn the more general stuff about Maxwell's equations and waves, which is like chapter 15 that we covered in 241. So just keep that in mind. The progression for Physics 242 is chapter 17 through 31, and then if time allows, we jump to the chapters on quantum mechanics, which I think starts at 37, if I remember correctly. But you can see I don't actually show it here because I have to see if I can reach the time uh, uh, or reach the chapter in time. So right now I'm giving it such that we only get through chapter 31. The last day of class, 5-5 is shown. You can also see they tell you about due dates. The last day to withdraw with tuition refund we see is 128. We see 320. Notice I put it over there because 128 is not one of the days of the class meeting, so I had to put it over there. Whereas 3-4 or 324 is the last day to withdraw without academic penalty. And because 324 was a Monday, I can actually keep it in here. So that's why it's in this column as opposed to that column. So that covers the actual schedule for the 242 course. Here's the specific policies. Again, one big thing to understand is the general rule in college is 15% of your lecture is how much you do not want to miss. For a class that meets twice a week for 15 weeks, that's 4.5 days. Uh, and that's what lectures are on Monday, Wednesday classes and Tuesday, Thursday classes because we're using the 15 week instead of the 16 week. Uh, Also, we meet once a week for labs. So if you do the math on that, 15% of basically 15 labs, because it's supposed to be 15 weeks, right? 15% of 15 labs is about 2.25. So a third day is meaning you're exceeding. A third lab means you've exceeded the allowed missed labs, and a fourth day of lecture means you've exceeded the number of missed labs. So you got to pay attention to that. Students are expected to attend all labs, and missing 4 labs will result in being dropped from the course and possibly receiving an F for the final course grade. I frequently say possibly because if the drop is made before that 324, the drop date, then you just get a withdrawal, and that does not affect your GPA. However, I don't necessarily always have time to drop students exactly when they miss the fourth day, and I might not get to it till after the withdrawal date, in which case your grade will be an F, and that's on you, not on me. Okay, so you've got to pay attention to your labs and your lecture syllabuses to make sure you're not going to be dropped for missing too much. Okay, the big rule is I really don't like dropping people. I don't want to drop people. I think all my students can pass and they should pass. So if you have to miss even a large number of days, if you keep me in the loop, I'll do everything I can to try to help you succeed, even though you have to miss some classes or labs. So keep me in the loop, and that'll prevent you from getting dropped. That being said, if you do miss 4 labs, you should immediately contact me and say, hey, Mr. Younger, I've now missed 4 labs. Am I going to be dropped? And if I tell you, even after hearing your explanation, I tell you that yes, you're going to be dropped, you should immediately drop yourself. Everybody, please hear that. If I advise you, or if I don't advise you because you didn't ask me, but if you miss 4 labs, uh, you're supposed to fail. If you don't have a really good reason for that, then you're gonna fail. And if you don't drop yourself on that case, then I might drop you after the drop date, in which case you're going to get an F, and you don't want to do that. So really, you need to take the bull by the horns and go to your advisor and drop yourself. That being said, I wouldn't go and drop myself, period, without talking to your instructor, specifically me, because I will work hard to make you be able to stay in the class if I can. Okay. I should mention there is one grade given for this course. So Physics 242 or Physics 241, there's one grade for that. There's not a grade for the lab that could be different from the grade for the lecture or vice versa. It's all one grade, and we count the lab as 20% of the course grade. Okay. Now, how the lab is graded, that depends on who you have for lab, and you need to see the lab syllabus on that. In this case and the 241 case, my syllabus was made up for one lecture and lab both. Okay, so those of you who have me for lab, your lecture syllabus should be sufficient to teach you what's going on in the lab as well. Labs are to be turned in by the beginning of lab or lecture, whichever meets earlier in the day. On the next lab day, FAFTR, that's a common word that y'all are probably not familiar with. It's called a typo. So yes, on the next day that lab meets. So for instance, if you have a lab every Wednesday, then you do a lab one Wednesday. The next Wednesday, your lab will be due. But if you meet lecture before you do lab, I don't want you guys skipping lecture to finish up your lab. So I make it due by the beginning of that time, not the beginning of lab. Most of my classes, at least this semester, usually have the lab meeting before the lecture, so that's not normally an issue. But the main thing is, a given lab is due the following lab day, and it's due at the earliest time between the lab and lecture meeting on that day. Okay. Uh, Turning in a lab report late will result in no less than 5 points. A little caveat on there. Sometimes I get a little behind on my grading, and I think it's only fair that if I do get behind on my grading, if you turned it in before I get to grading your report, then I'm not going to count it as late. Okay. Now, if you turn it in after I've already graded it, then yeah, you're going to get at least 5 points taken off. But sometimes it's even more than 30 points. Okay. Or at least as much as 30 points. I don't think I've ever taken off more than 30, but in principle, it could happen. Uh, Generally, each error in completing the lab will result in a 5 point grade decrease, and each particularly impressive lab work will result in a 5 point grade increase. Again, I'm just telling you I use increments of five. Uh, the use of generative AI, this is actually the statement that the college provided for me. I just used it, and I just want to tell you that that's, cheating. It's a form of cheating if you get AI to do some fraction of your work. That being said, I have discovered AI is really, really helpful. You can ask AI a very specific question like, how do I solve a Gauss's law problem using the integral form of Gauss's law, and AI will give you step-by-step instructions, especially if you keep rewriting the prompt to give it. So I do recommend you use that as much as you need to while you're trying to learn the material. But if you're turning in the document, then if you blatantly write down exactly what AI gave you or something, then that's cheating. If you use AI appropriately, which is to teach you how to do that, and then you do it, and then you close it and don't look at AI and you resolve the problem, then that's not cheating. Obviously, I'm open to some misbehavior in that, but that's okay. That's on you because when you cheat, you're really just cheating yourself. Trust me, it gets really bad if you have a background with calculus-based physics or in physics or something like that, and then you go doing a job that requires your knowledge of that course. The employer will quickly discover that you are in fact incompetent and will quickly relieve you of your duty. So you do not want to cheat on courses because it only harms you in the end. So please don't, but that's mainly what this generative AI procedure is. I just don't want you using this as a cheating opportunity, but I highly recommend its use for learning. Okay. If it is found that a student has used AI to author any of their work, that assignment will receive a zero, and the student may be dropped from the course. That's generally what I say with any time a student cheats, whether they're cheating on a face-to-face test, an online test, a final exam, or anything like that. I reserve the right to kick you out of the class and give you an F for the course in that case. It's said multiple times in here as well. Grade policy. Based on the progression of the course, the grade distribution of each assignment may change. However, if changes are made, I will notify students in a timely manner and in writing. Final grades are made available to each student within the SIS system, now web delivered via MyTCC or SIS. This paragraph is one that I consider really important, so I want to read it to you. To do well in the course, the student will need to achieve a level of mastery of the material. The best way to master material is to read the text and complete every assignment, activity, and discussion within the Canvas weekly modules. Reading the textbook slash e-text and watching the accompanying videos very attentively is crucial. However, without the practice afforded by the assignment and activities, comprehension will be elusive. In other words, it's not just enough to read and understand examples. Okay, it feels like it is. You feel like, oh, I can do this easy. This is really straightforward stuff. And then you sit down and try to solve a physics problem, and immediately you realize that something horrible has happened, and you don't know even what to write down. So, with that in mind, you really need to figure out how to learn in this scenario, and that's what my job is trying to teach you how to solve physics problems and stuff of that sort. Notice I do have a modified 10-point scale. It's modified to help my students because I teach a very, very rigorous, difficult calculus-based physics course. And I continue to teach that because I know that when I got a course that wasn't as rigorous as it needed to be, it caused me problems later on in my career and or academics, later in school, for instance. So I really try to keep that standard high, but I augment it by trying really hard, bending over backwards to make sure you understand every little nuance of solving a physics problem. So you'll see that in my videos on my YouTube channel as well as lectures that you attend. But what I mean by a modified 10-point scale is yes, I round up at 89.5 to an A and at 79.5 to a B, but the modification comes in where I actually allow you as low as a 68.5 for a C or a 58.5 for a D rather than 69.5 and 59.5. So that's what I mean by the modified 10-point scale. You can see, and again, these are all true in all of my 241 and 242 classes. The online tests are worth a mere 10%. They really should be thought of as something to give you the confidence to succeed in the face-to-face test. And because they happen roughly every two chapters, they're more frequently so that you get tested more frequently and therefore are more comfortable taking tests. The homework and other activities, that means homeworks as well as any extra credit assignments I give you, they're going to count as 10% of your course grade, and I'm going to drop your lowest two. I'm also going to drop your lowest online test. About the online test, I already explained how you're able to use books and notes and the internet and all that good stuff, but one thing I wanted to mention is you're also allowed multiple attempts. I usually give my online test takers 3 attempts, and I only take their highest score. Okay. Again, that's because this online test is sort of like more homework that you're solving, and it's really its job is to get you better prepared for the test, the actual face-to-face test. Conceptual homework is only worth 5% of the course grade. The three face-to-face tests, as I said, are worth 30%. That means each one is 10%. The comprehensive final exam is worth 25%, and no, you can't test out of it. You can't do so well that I'm not going to allow you to take it because I consider that final comprehensive exam as a important part of the pedagogy of learning physics. Okay. Lab grade counts as 20%, and again, you'll see your lab syllabus for that. If you have me, then your syllabus is built into the course, or there's a separate one for the lab. Practice tests. Again, these are optional, but notice these grades add up to 100% right here. So this is extra. But again, you can get up to 5 points added to your course grade as calculated by this stuff by making 100 on all of the practice tests. If you miss one practice test, though, you automatically can't get 100 because you're going to get a 0 for one of those. All right. Lab grade. The following is the grading policy for Mr. Younger's lab. If the student has someone else for lab, they will need to see that lab instructor's grading policy. This again is the same for 241 and 242. If all students consistently, at the instructor's discretion, contribute to all parts of each lab, then the grade will be based on 50% attendance and lab report grades 50%, with the lowest lab dropped. So what I mean by that is Well, let me finish reading this, then I'll say the attendance grade will be 100 for 0 absences, 99 for 1 absence, 95 for 2 absences, 90 for 3 absences, so on and so forth. Okay, so and it doesn't matter whether the absences are excused or not. That's the nature of college. The excused absence doesn't mean any more than non-excused absence. An absence is an absence, and you can't recover that. So I recommend you not miss. Period. But that being said, if you don't miss any labs, you get 100 for the attendance grade, and let's say you had an 85 grade for your average of all your lab grades after I dropped the lowest one, then I would take those two numbers, the 100 that you got for attendance and the 85 that you got for the lab grade, lab report grade, and add them. I get 185, and then I divide that by two. That makes 180 would be, of course, 90. So 185 would be 92.5. That would be your grade. Missing 4 labs results in an F for the course. You can't get around that. If you see that you might have to miss 4 labs, you need to let me know, and we'll see if we can figure out some way for you not to miss 4 labs. Okay, so don't miss 4 labs, or you will get an F for the course. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If all students are not consistently contributing, the instructor will warn students verbally and by email and or Canvas announcement that they are in jeopardy of having to take the lab final exam. If the students do not satisfactorily improve at the instructor's discretion, then by the 21st of April, I said 4th of April is what I thought I remembered, but it's the 21st of April, then by April 21st, the instructor will announce verbally and by email and our Canvas announcement a lab final exam will be held and the following grading will be used. The grade will be based on 20% attendance, 50% lab report with the lowest lab dropped, and a brutal lab final exam that's worth 30%. This lab exam that we make up traditionally have one student will make like a 92 out of 24 students, and virtually every other student makes in the 50s. I don't know why. They're very straightforward questions about the fundamentals of the lab and what you did in the lab and why you did what you did in the lab. And they're not requiring you to memorize your lab results or anything like that. They're just fundamental questions about the lab. So you do not want to take this lab final. It's very rare that students do well on it. Like I said, I think the best I ever had was one time out of a class of 24, I had 3 students make A's on a lab final. But even then, when I had 3 students make an A, I might that one time I think I might have had a C, but everybody else made F's. So it's really a hard final. You don't want to do that. So definitely contribute and take your lab seriously. Contribute to all parts. Turn in your lab properly. That kind of stuff. Because I can't tell whether you're interacting with the other people for my online lab, but I can tell what your lab report product is. And obviously, if it's identical to another student's, that's not necessarily helpful. They should be written by you separately. Okay. Course communications, again, this is the same other than little details like what you put in the subject line here, but in general, the course communication rules are the same for all my 241 classes. Uh, Students are required to check their TCC email accounts on all class days and Sunday. By the way, this is one part that does differ. I have different requirements for my online students than I do for my face-to-face students. So make sure you read that section on that if you're dealing with a online class, because this syllabus for 242 is all face-to-face stuff. So students are required to check their TCC email accounts all class days, which if you're a Monday, Wednesday class, then that'd be Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. Or if you're a Tuesday, Thursday class, then it's Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday. But if it's an online class, you need to check your syllabus for that. They are also expected to log into Canvas page for the course every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. Again, these particular days might change for an online course versus a face-to-face course, but the rule still stands. You have certain number of times you have to log into Canvas just to sort of show me that you're still progressing in the course and that I don't need to drop you. We do get pressure from administration at of our college to drop students that aren't participating actively, and the reason is because TCC has to pay back resources and money that we've spent from other organizations that pay for students' tuition. So if a student, for instance, is on a GI Bill and signs up for class but never shows up, if I don't drop them, then they might get 16 weeks straight of checks from the GI Bill, and then I drop them later, and we find out that the last day they attended was a long time ago. The GI Bill and the government that works that will say, "Hey, we need our money back," and then TCC has to pay that back. So we try not to allow that to happen, and they really want us to drop you immediately upon a student that stops attending or stops progressing. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to drop people. It's not that we dislike students. It's not that we're trying to do less work. It's just that we are trying to be fiscally responsible and not lose our jobs. So students are encouraged to communicate with the instructor via email, and they do so. And to do so, they must, one, only send emails from their TCC email account. These are those rules I was telling you about. Two, start the subject line of each email, including replies to the instructor's emails, with, in this case, again, this is different for your syllabus probably. It has to start with 242 space day. Okay, that's for the people that are taking this class that this syllabus is for. In this same spot, you'll have the appropriate word for your particular section of Physics 241 or 242. So check that out. And three, you has to include your first and last name in the email. So one, mail it only from your TCC email account. Two, the subject line must start with some identifier that shows me what section of the class you're in. And then three, the email must include your first and last name. Students can expect to have their properly executed emails replied to within one business day as defined in class and below. I mentioned in class already how that's dealt with, so later on I'm going to explain it in the next paragraph. If the student does not receive a reply to their email or receive an email to all students addressing their question or questions within one business day, again, as defined below, they are encouraged to text the instructor on his personal cell phone number listed near the top of the syllabus, and that text should state that they are in Physics 242 day. Again, that changes from section to section, and it should include their first and last name. Okay, what does a reply within one business day mean? It means if a student emails the instructor as early as 12:01 a.m. on a Tuesday, then the instructor should reply by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, assuming Tuesday and Wednesday are not state or federal holidays or school holidays. Other than Friday, all other non-weekend days are handled just like Tuesday above. If a student emails the instructor as early as 12:01 a.m. on Friday, then the instructor should send a reply email by 11:59 p.m. on Monday. So that's what I mean by one day. Okay, so remember, if you don't get a response within one day as defined here, you should text me. Okay, and when you text me, you got to make sure you let me know what class you're in. This section is obviously PHY 242 day, and you should give me your first and last name. When should a student text the instructor? A text message should be sent whenever an urgent message needs to be given to the instructor or when the instructor has not replied to a student's email within one business day. Note, a student that attempts to begin their homework assignment on the night when the assignment is due at 11:59 p.m. does not have an urgent message for the instructor because they do not understand the assignment or cannot find the assignment or cannot access the assignment. They have just unwisely waited to the last minute. Okay, so in other words, it's on you. You're supposed to be adult working through college at this point. So when I give you an assignment, you should start that immediately upon it being assigned, not the day it's do. You might do that, and that's fine. You can succeed that way, but it's not the best way. It's definitely not the best way to learn the material. And what's worse is it can cause a lot of problems. So make sure you at least can find the homework, that the link to the homework works. At least immediately upon learning that you have a new homework assignment, you should at least do that. And then you won't have to email and say, "Hey, I don't know where this homework is," or "Hey, I don't know how to access it," or "Hey, it's not working." Okay. Attendance policy. All students are expected to be present and on time at all scheduled class and laboratory meetings, whether in person or online. Instructors are not required to admit or give attendance to credit to a student who arrives late to a class or lab meeting. There will be an absence column slash row in the Canvas gradebook that will show the number of absences a student has. My classes, I'm using the attendance, at least my face-to-face classes, I'm using the attendance location within Canvas to do your lecture. And then lab will have a column for lab absences as well. They might not come up until next week or the week after, but it should be there soon. If you don't see it, let me know. That means I probably forgot and I needed to be spurred by, a student saying, "Hey, you're not doing your job." So that's cool. All right. A student who adds a class or registers after the first day of classes is counted absent from all class and lab meetings missed prior to the registration. That's just done. It's just that's the way nature has to work. So you are going to be counted for that absence, even if you lined up if you registered late. If a student is absent more than 15% of the scheduled instructional time, they may be dropped at the instructor's discretion. Parenthetically, I'm saying 15% is 4.5 days of lecture. Obviously, that's for this particular class, and it's for any 15-week semester that has two meetings a week. And 15% is 2.25 lab days. Again, that's for any 15-week class that has lab once per week. So that means once a student misses 5 lectures or 4 labs, they may be dropped. The date on which the student is dropped is whenever the instructor decides to drop them. In other words, I have a lot of stuff to do. I might not get it done immediately. I might even forget for a couple weeks. And you need to look into that, because if I have to drop you, I might not drop you in time to get you the W. Okay, I'm not doing that on purpose. I'm definitely not doing that to be a jerk, but it does happen. So I want you to heed my warnings as given in the syllabus. The date on which the student is dropped is whenever the instructor decides to drop them. If a student does miss 15% or more, they should immediately email their instructor to see if they're going to be dropped. If they are going to be dropped, they should drop the course themselves, because not doing so could cause the student to receive an F for the course rather than a withdrawal W. See also the withdrawal policy in the syllabus for more information. Students who do not attend or participate in class by the deadline to drop for a tuition refund, that was that 128 day that I was telling you, may be deleted from the course. So if you're not preparing by the 128 day by January 28th, again, I think that is I just double checked. That is the last day to draw a withdrawal with a tuition refund. If you haven't participated by then, you're going to be dropped. Okay, so just make sure you've done your homework assignments and stuff by then. In an online class, which is also called distance learning, student attendance is determined by course participation as defined by the faculty. Students who enroll in a course but do not meet federal attendance requirements shall be administratively deleted or withdrawn from the course in accordance with federal requirements. Existing college policies regarding tuition refund shall remain in effect. So that means if later on, maybe even 6 weeks into the semester, if an administrator or a teacher discovers, "Oh, you've been taking this Physics 242 course and you haven't completed Calc 1, for instance," we can up and drop you. And it doesn't matter that you've done all that work. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to, for instance, make use of the fact that some careless person was able to get you in a class that you didn't have the prerequisites for. You don't want to take advantage of that, because if you do, there's a chance that you're going to be dropped later and all that work will be completely wasted. Okay? Note, more than 15% is 5 days or more of lecture, or 3 labs meetings or more of lab. Okay. Once a student misses 4 class meetings or 2 labs in a row, this is in a row here. Notice that's the difference. Without contacting the instructor, they may be dropped at the instructor's discretion. If such a drop occurs after the withdrawal date, which is March 24th, the student will receive an F. If a student misses a test, online or face to face for that matter, they must contact the instructor within 48 hours of the missed test to request an extension, or a grade of 0 will be received and the student may be dropped at the instructor's discretion. You don't get to just, for instance, miss a test because you're not ready for it. I've had people try to do that before. That's not the way college or any school should work, really. If you're not ready for it, then you have to take it and possibly just fail. So take your test by the time they're due and be sure of doing that. If you have to miss one, hopefully by an excused reason, then you need to email me within 24 hours or get a loved one or something to do to email me within 24 hours. That way I won't just blatantly drop you from the class and so on. Uh, by the way, missing two tests will result in being dropped, period. Missing one test is bad, and it really angers me when it happens to some extent, just because the student's being reckless and not growing to their potential. So I'm upset with them for not meeting the mark that they should be setting for themselves. That being said, even if I am quote unquote mad, I'm not going to hold that against anybody. But the deal is, you should be dropped, so you need to contact me. If you miss two, then it's just over. You're just going to be dropped. Okay. And again, the same rules apply. I might not get it done in time for you to get the W, so you want to do that yourself. Again, I would not do your self dropping unless you've talked to me first, though, just to be certain. I have students every semester talk to me, early on, hey, I'm thinking about dropping, and I almost always recommend them not drop. I think I've only recommended maybe 3 times in my whole career for a student to drop because I do so much to try to help my students succeed. All right, late work, makeup exam policy, so on. Students are allowed to turn in their online homework up to 1 week late after the due date for reduced credit. That's the way you're allowed to do late work. And in fact, I usually make it where they can turn it in quite a bit later as far as homeworks go. Again, with penalties. But the main thing is you're not going to get out of getting a lower grade because you turned it in late. So you need to just go ahead and do it, and preferably not do it late. Face-to-face tests and the final exam are on set dates. Actually, the online tests are too, by the way. If the student cannot take the test on the date, on that date, they should let their instructor know the reason at least 1 week in advance. Uh, Parenthetically, the instructor may or may not approve the reason for missing the test, and therefore missing could result in a 0 for that test. Failure to take one of these steps will result in a withdrawal and possibly a grade of F at the instructor's discretion. However, if the drop occurs after the last day to drop without academic penalty, that's the 324 date, I think, the course grade will be an F. Generally, missed labs are impossible to make up, but occasionally the instructor may have a way to help, so do ask, preferably in advance. In other words, if you have to miss lab and you know you have to miss it, let me know in advance and I might be able to set it up so that you don't have to miss lab. Classroom behavior, behave. That's the rule. And the behaviors that you think are appropriate for the classroom are the same as the ones that are appropriate for Zoom meetings. For instance, you wouldn't smoke in class, so you probably shouldn't be smoking in a Zoom meeting. That being said, I doubt I'm going to do anything to you, but you shouldn't be drinking wine during a Zoom meeting either, just like you shouldn't be drinking wine in class. Okay, so just keep those things in mind. Read over this. This is really basically just the statement that the college provides. I haven't had problems with students being disruptive in class in general, so I doubt it's going to happen now. Electronic devices, I have very specific rules, so please pay attention. Electronic devices that are not being used for taking notes are prohibited from use during course meetings and laboratories unless authorized by the appropriate faculty or staff. If authorized, all communication devices should be in silent mode and not answered while the meetings are in progress. Cell phones, iPads, various internet-enabled electronic devices, etc., have been used to cheat on tests. So the instructor has adopted two different ways to prevent such malfeasance. One, students will be required to put their phone away. Uh, for example, put the phone in their purse or pocket or book bag during the test, and any student found with their phone, iPad, out during a test will be deemed to be cheating and given a zero for that test and possibly turned in for disciplinary action. Or two, occasionally we have students, for instance, that are on call for their military job or whatever, and in so doing, they have to have their phone out. So I allow it, and this is what I do in those cases. Students will be required to silence their phone and place it at the end of their table during the test. And again, any student found to be handling a phone or iPad or will be deemed to be cheating and possibly turned in for disciplinary action. During the online tests and assignments, students are allowed to use electronic devices and may even make use of the internet, their textbooks, other books, and even their notes. However, online tests are timed, and extensive use of such resources could result in going beyond the allowed time. Going beyond the allowed time will result in huge penalties. See above. Students may not use online resources or documents created later than the date the test was posted. Students may not get personal assistance from any other person that has already seen or taken the online test. Communicating directly or indirectly with such a person is not allowed. Communications not allowed include texting, calling, FaceTiming, reading a test, or physics-related posts on the internet or social media, speaking face to face as well. Okay, so you're not allowed to talk with someone that's already seen the test about anything really is the rule you should use, even though really specifically it would be a problem if you're talking about the test or anything uh, sort of analogous to the test, because that's just another way of trying to cheat. Okay. A good rule of thumb that everyone should adopt is that if a student must look up more than one problem on an online test, then the student is likely not learned the material sufficiently to pass. It should be adopted specifically because once you take the first online test, you usually have two more left. And if you had to look up more than one in that first test, you should go back to taking the practice test some more before you take your second attempt. So that's why I put that rule should be there. However, I'm getting ready to give you a more stringent and better rule. Note, having to look up fewer than one problem per practice test or even two problems in three or four practice tests is a better standard to adopt as an indicator that the student is learning the material sufficiently. Additionally, students should not be able to score or should be able to score an 80 or higher on three or more practice tests before the student should consider themselves ready to take the actual face-to-face or online test. In other words, if you haven't scored at least an 83 times on the practice test, you're probably not yet ready. Okay. Important, so repeated. If at any time during a face-to-face, aka face-to-face test, a student is found to have an electronic device capable of accessing the internet out, as opposed to being stowed in a closed book bag or purse or in a pocket or at the end of the table, or if they have out any notes other than the allowed equation sheet, the or instructor allowed documents, they will be given a zero for the test and at the instructor's discretion may be dropped from the course. The instructor may also pursue additional academic penalties. If such a drop occurs after the 24th of March, the student will receive an F. So again, you are allowed an equation sheet, but if you have out electronic device capable of storing notes, are photographs of notes, are capable of accessing the internet. If you have that out on your person, like in your hand, or you're looking at it, it's in touchable distance while you're taking the test, any of that kind of stuff, that's going to be considered cheating, and you will fail the test. You're going to get a zero for that test no matter what. It doesn't matter if you aren't using them to cheat. The rule is if it's out this way, you will be considered cheating. So if you have your notes out, if you have some other documents out, if you have your iPad out or something like that, then you are going to get a zero for that test and possibly be put into trouble for academic cheating. Okay. There's policies on inclement weather, and if we have to shut down for pandemics, that sort of thing. Here's the withdrawal policy. Students who wish to withdraw without academic penalty should contact an advisor and determine the appropriate procedure. Withdrawals through March 24th will result in a W, which doesn't affect your GPA. After the 24th of March, a withdrawal will result in a grade of F, except under mitigating circumstances that must be documented by the instructor and approved by the academic dean. In other words, if you do it afterwards, you can appeal it and go to our dean, and they may or may not make it something other than an F. A student who drops after the last day to withdraw does not receive a W. The student receives an F, in which case there is both an academic and financial penalty. A student who withdraws by the deadline faces a financial penalty, but not an academic penalty. This is a line that TCC wrote. I just included it because I thought they probably thought it was important. So there's the deadline to drop with a tuition refund. That's on January 28th, and to drop with a without affecting your grade negatively, you have to do it by 3/24. Again, talk to me before you consider dropping. I've had students that thought they should drop or whatever because they thought they were gonna get a C and they really wanted to make an A, and lo and behold, they ended up making an A after I talked them out of dropping. So keep that in mind. Academic integrity. TCC expects students to demonstrate personal and academic integrity, to be open to new ideas, and to share in a community where individuals from diverse backgrounds and cultures help one another grow intellectually, socially, and personally. This is what it means to be, in my opinion, an educated human. Okay. A good educated human treats people with respect. TCC expects students to achieve, not just to get by, and while many caring and talented faculty and staff are here to help, students must take responsibility of their own learning. Students should strive for a high level of academic performance and to be responsible contributing citizens within the college and outside communities. Above all, TCC wants students to develop a love of learning that will last a lifetime, along with a lifelong interest in maintaining emotional and physical wellness. Here's our statement on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tidewater Community College supports an inclusive learning environment where diversity is recognized, respected, and valued. For more information regarding our college's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, please visit that website. Student outcomes assessment required. Work products submitted by students to fulfill course requirements may be used by the college to evaluate its academic programs and general education requirements. I'm warning you that we sometimes will take work that you turn in and we submit that to a third party to grade it, but we do anonymize it, so it's not like we're violating HIPAA or any other privacy protections. So just know that, and that's just our clarifier to make sure that we're not doing stuff without students knowing. Plagiarism and academic misconduct. I'll just let you read over that. This obviously is stuff that you have for all your courses. In fact, I think I just took exactly what the college wrote and used that. Educational accessibility, the same thing. Emergency procedures, same thing. Mandatory safety training video. The state law requires you to watch this, so you're supposed to click on this link and watch this 3 minute and 17-second video. Make sure you do that. In fact, you're going to have to sign that you did do that later on. Grievance procedures, Title IX, that's all there. Library, Canvas support, academic support services. Notice we do have various resources that you can use, including tutorial services and stuff of that sort. So check those out. This is a link to my YouTube channel. This is a link to my Physics 242 Google Drive. This is a link to my 241 Google Drive. The main reason I'm telling you this is because of this paragraph down here. When you go to my YouTube channel, in the box that has the description, there will be something that looks like this, only in the YouTube environment, there's no underscore. It's just a space. It actually converts it to a space. But this thing tells you something very specific that's very important. So for instance, a lot of my videos were made in 2021 and 2022, and that was made with a document cam, a piece of paper, and pens and pencils, and me writing. It was also recorded over the internet in Currituck County, where we didn't have very good internet service. For instance, it was a good day in Currituck when I was getting 24 megabytes per second through my internet provider, and that is just horrible, but that was the best, right? And it often got way worse. So sometimes the videos on my YouTube channel will be quite pixelated in parts, and you can't necessarily make out my notes very clearly. So to correct for that, I have created a Google Drive where the notes are actually stored. So if you find a video that looks like it's me writing on paper, you might want to immediately look in the description, find out which course it's for, 241, 242, and what day it's on. For instance, this is August 26, 2024. And then you're going to take this number 08262024. You're going to copy that number from the description of the video, and then you're going to go to the appropriate Google Drive and do a search for that, and boom, out will pop a PDF of the notes that you need for that particular video. So that's just another thing I offer so that you can do it. And I do it for even the videos that weren't handwritten. So all my notes are there. Uh, this explains all that again, but like I said, that's how you can use my YouTube channel. Telehealth support, we actually have that. That's nice. Here again are some more websites. There's my YouTube channel again. Other stuff the college recommends you have. Optional course information again. Other stuff the college has given. The key thing here is at the end of my syllabus, there is a document that I would like you to fill out electronically, where you actually type in your name and answers to all these questions and then virtually sign it by doing this. The ideal scenario really would be you print this out and handwrite all your responses, or at least hand sign this part and type all the other stuff, print it out, and then scan it, turn it to a PDF, and turn that in. That would be the best result. But you can also just type everything in, and the fact that it comes from your TCC email account is going to be what I consider it to be a valid explanation that you did in fact sign it. Okay, so it's like proof that you signed it is the fact that you got this document, you put it in my course in an area in week one's module, an assignment link, and the fact that it came from you, listed as you, or even if it was emailed to you coming from you, that would be acceptable. But the fact that you're turning in Canvas means that someone that had access to your Canvas account is the one turning it in, so I can believe I can safely assume this signature was yours. So it's just a way of us legally making sure that, for instance, you watched this video that you're required to watch. So make sure you do this. All of this is supposed to be turned in specifically by the 29th of January. So by 29 of January 2025, you need to have this turned in. I am going to put in a turn in link in week one. So make sure you look for that. If you go to turn it in and it's not there, that's the time when you're going to text me and tell me, hey, Mr. Younger, you forgot to put the turn in link. But that's it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Now we've gone over the 241 and 242 syllabuses. Again, there are certain parts that are going to be different from one section of 241 to another and from one section of 242 to another. So please check that out. Uh, that's it. I hope you all found this helpful. Again, it's kind of long, so I get it if you just take a little while to do it. But have a good day. Thanks for coming, and thanks for choosing TCC and choosing my class. Have a good day. Bye-bye.